Hey, what's up you guys? It's Simon. Welcome back to my channel. So we are officially like a third of the way into Inktober, which is really cool. So first getting into day 11 of this little triplet. When I first saw cat and egg, I could not think of a single interesting way to illustrate it, despite eggs being one of my favorite things to draw. I really like eggs as like an aesthetic, I guess. I draw lots of eggs as like accessories or accents on clothing in more of like my pastel illustrations, and I did play with that to some extent, but I couldn't figure out how to incorporate a cat until I got the idea to draw like a normal fried egg, but then have like the egg be shaped like a cat's head, if that makes sense. And while I did feel like I liked this idea and thought it was pretty cute, I also felt like it might be a little bit overly simple. So instead, I decided to ask my husband what he thought, and he gave me the idea to draw like a cracked egg that was cracking in the shape of a cat, if that makes sense. Of course, it'll make more sense since you're seeing the finished line work on screen, obviously. Yeah, I also played around a lot more a bit more with the background to make it a little more full and not have so much empty space. So obviously I filled it with like the little cat fried egg that I thought of and some actual eggs, but if you want to see all of the sketching that got me to this point, as well as the PSD files for the finished line art for this illustration, all of the previous illustrations, and all of the future illustrations for Inktober, you can check out my Patreon. The link will be down in the description as always. So, after settling on the final version of this sketch, I had to figure out how I wanted to color it, and I ended up with going sort of like a mixed media Posca and pencil situation. At first I played with the idea of doing watercolor, because if you think about an egg cracking, of course the white and the yolk comes out, so I wondered if I should have done some sort of gradient on the central cat figure, from like yellowish white to solid white in the center, but I thought it would be more unique and stand out more if I just made the cat completely out of yolk. I also wanted the yolk to be like really sharp and clean, but at the same time I wanted the shading to be kind of soft, if that makes sense. So ultimately I went with 3 colors of Posca, a light yellow, a darker orangish yellow, and a sort of like baby blue for the outline, because I thought the blue would of course make a nice contrast with the yellow, but still make it an overall like soft and bright illustration. Then for pencils, I just kept it simple with 2. I had a light blue and an orange, and unlike day 6, despite being one that at first I struggled to come up with an idea for, it genuinely ended up being one of my favorites. I like how the Poscas pop off the page, even with like the subtle shading from the pencils, and it's low-key something I might end up making stickers of, because I just think the design is super cute. I have a few Posca drawings planned out for this month, and I'm really tempted to turn all of them into stickers, honestly, so if that's something you guys would be interested in seeing, be sure to leave a comment down below. So yeah, here is our little cat egg illustration. So here is day 12, and y'all, I really seem to be on a roll with Poscas here, because we have yet another Posca illustration for day 12. So when I saw berry and foam, I knew I wanted to go with some sort of like drink, because foam immediately reminded me of whipped cream. At first I was really inspired by like those aesthetic illustrations you see from people like Mayoko, I hope I'm saying that right, which have like really saturated colors, either the kind of like chunky or thin like line art, and some sort of clear or see-through element, and the clear element is kind of hard to explain, but like see-through like plastic, glass, a liquid of some sort. I hope that makes sense. I think the best illustration or like example would be like where she does things that are filled with water that aren't usually filled with water, so like jackets, skirts, soda cans, like the clear soda cans, if that makes sense, like skirts, hair, and all that. So I actually decided to try and do something similar. So I experimented a bit with different cup shapes, as well as like just different varying ways of like having the strawberries dispersed throughout, because obviously I had to incorporate the berry somewhere. And I did want to do a see-through version, but I ultimately ended up going with something solid because I couldn't really get it to look like how it did in my head due to the nature of Poscas, which are just very opaque. And while I'm sure it can be done, I just couldn't achieve it the way that I wanted it to. So rather than trying to force myself to make something match the image in my head, even though it wasn't working out, I decided to change what I saw in my head. So instead, I went with a little bit more of an opaque design with a gradient bubble tea. I also played a little bit with trying to wet the Poscas to get a really smooth gradient, and the results were interesting. I think on a smaller scale it would have worked a lot better. In fact, the color studies that I did were a really smooth gradient, but because I was working in a larger area and the Poscas were obviously drying because they do dry very fast, it was a little bit patchy, but I still think that it's passable. But let me know what you guys think of it. I also realized partway through the planning phase that I was completely forgetting about the foam or cream aspect. So no joke, I googled if it was normal to put like whipped cream on top of boba, and while it's not totally common, it also doesn't not happen. So I decided it was okay to just throw some whipped cream on top. I couldn't decide if I wanted to do a dome lid or not, and for a while I did decide that I didn't want a dome, but then I got the idea to do like chopped strawberries rather than whole strawberries on top, which I also felt like made more sense if it was like an actual drink, kind of like a pink drink from Starbucks, but like a little bit different. I kind of wish I went with more of like a purplish color for the boba, kind of similar to like what taro would be, or like the color of the straw. But I didn't have a good range of purples that I thought would really layer in the nice pastel way that I wanted. I have, of course, the pastel purple and then the dark purple, but I felt like the dark purple was just too much, and it would have been a little bit difficult to get the softer gradient that I had in mind. However, I just couldn't get the idea of a pink ombre out of my head as well. So overall, that's what I decided to do, and I think it turned into this satisfying little Posca doodle that we have here, and I thought it was a lot of fun. Unlike the others though, I don't think I will be turning this into a sticker unless I do some serious digitization to it. In fact, I might completely redo it along with some of the colors, but the overall design I might still turn into a sticker. So just like the previous illustration, if that's something that you guys want to see, let me know. So the last illustration that we have here is, I guess it's a little bit of a stretch, I would say. So our prompts were broom and horn, and I literally immediately got the idea, of course, of like a witch. It's spooky season, and we are technically doing witchtober here after all. So going off of the classic trope of like witches using brooms for travel, I got the idea of sticking a bike horn onto the tip of a broom that's being ridden by a rather unhappy witch. I also made sure to make it clear that this horn was magically being honked, if that makes sense. That's a weird sentence. Anyway, not like being honked, or not only being honked, but also like playing La Cucaracha, because every gag horn legally should be playing that song. So now that the initial idea is out of the way, let's talk about the final illustration. I'm sorry I smacked you guys. I'm so sorry. But anyway, because of the nature of the illustration, I unfortunately had to draw a full body and a profile. Despite normally struggling with a side profile, I actually busted this one out relatively quickly, and while it's not the most beautiful side profile in the entire world, it's also not super ugly. I don't know what it is about Inktober, but I have not been struggling with profiles nearly as much as I normally do. I did, of course, struggle a bit with cleaning up the initial sketch, which, again, is on Patreon. But yeah, I didn't have as much trouble cleaning up. But there's always this talk about how your sketch looks better than the line art, and that is definitely true in this case, even more so when your line art is based not only off of your initial sketch, but a secondary sketch that was cleaning up that sketch, and then you're doing light art on top. So it's definitely a bit stressful, but overall I think it ended up being exactly what I wanted it to be, just a funny little witch illustration. I also had a lot of fun doing the watercolor for this illustration. I had everything pre-mixed off camera as normal, but I think it was nice to have the washes just go down very smoothly. Again, I had a little bit of an issue with the darker colors, but like her skin and her hair and the broom, like every single part of that just went down really, really nicely. And I kind of don't mind the patchiness in the darker bits. So yeah, strangely enough, I'm pretty happy with how the illustration turned out. I wish I would have had more time to sort of work on this, as well as the Posca like drink from day 12, but I am filming this immediately after coming back from like a sort of like family event where I was really working my butt off to like physically, like doing lots of physical labor. So I was trying to get these filmed as fast as possible so that I could relax. So yeah, I'm sorry if this voiceover seemed rushed or if the illustrations seemed rushed, but y'all, I am exhausted. I am ready to lie down and take a little break for a few days. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and like it and leave a comment, because I am also working my butt off for you guys. And thank you to everybody that already does watch my videos. You guys mean the world to me. And as always, I also want to give a shout out to my patrons, Elise Thompson, Duran, Mandy, and Schleeps. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for continuing to support me every single month. You guys have no idea how much it like actually means to me. You guys are amazing. You guys like really help me think that, you know, this whole art thing is something that I'm gonna be able to do and like continue to do. So thank you guys. I'm sorry for rambling. Again, I'm exhausted. I'm all over the place, but I hope you enjoyed this video nonetheless, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.